So this mimer that we're about to begin learning, it's on page 203 if you're using the Maimorim Mulukatim of the previous Rebbe, volume 3. It's on page 203 there. But actually, the mimer was said, Shabbos Parshas Pekudei, excuse me, Taf Reish Tzadik Beis, 1932, in a city called Postov, I believe somewhere in Lithuania. Let me give you a little history and background. And that is that the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok, once he was forced out of Russia, he moved to Riga, Latvia, and it was really a temporary place for him. It wasn't where he planned on settling. And the simple reason is because his heart and soul was with the Russian, his brothers and sisters in Russia, and he was hopeful that he might be able to return there. And even if not, Riga was very, like Yekish, and there weren't many Hasidim there. Not just Chabad Hasidim. It wasn't a bastion for Hasidim. So the Rebbe, as a Lubavitcher Rebbe who would say Hasidus, Maimorim, and lead Farbrengens and everything else, this was something that he didn't feel he'll have the greatest exposure and ability to do that there, and it won't be appreciated. Because the culture of Hasidic Judaism and Riga-like Judaism was like night and day. Nevertheless, he persisted while he was there to teach and share and inspire, and he accomplished a great deal, especially through the help of two individuals. Rabbi Chadikov, who became later a secretary of his, and then the Rebbe's when he came to America, Rabbi Mordechai Isaac Chadikov. And the other one was Rabbi Mordechai Dubin, who was actually a parliamentary member of the Latvian government, who was influential in helping the Frierdiker Rebbe in various things throughout the years that he was there, and even later. So those two individuals were Lubavitchers and very close to the previous Rebbe, and they were very helpful. But nevertheless, Riga was never a place where he really, could call home. So throughout the 1930s, from his letters, it shows that he was looking to move and was hopeful that America would be a place for him. So in 2930, when he came to America, and he visited Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, of course, New York and Brooklyn and Bronx and other cities, in 1930, in either May or June, he writes to his secretary, who communicates it to other people, and he wrote to some other people that unfortunately he decided he's not going to move to America now because he was disappointed in the level of Yiddishkeit, and I guess also the level of support and interest. It was disappointing for what he was hoping for. So, although there was a bikush, a strong desire of his Hasidim in America, in New York and Chicago in particular, to have the Rebbe move to either of those cities, the Rebbe changed his mind and made a quick U-turn and returned to America in July of 1930 and said that he's not moving. So that was one at that time. So the question is, where do you go from here? So he was hoping to go to Poland, to Warsaw, because Warsaw was really a heavy area of Yiddishkeit. both secular Yiddishkeit and from Yiddishkeit, Hasidic Judaism, the Gerach Hasidim, the Amshinover Hasidim, the Alexander Hasidim. Poland was very, very large, and Krakow and Warsaw, up and down, Lublin. Up and down, you had Reb Meir Shapiro had his yeshiva Chachmei Lublin in Lublin, and he started Hadaf Hayomi. It was happening. Yiddishkeit was really the center of Yiddishkeit in the 30s. Was not in Russia because Stalin shut everything down, but it was in Poland. So the Rebbe hoped to move there, and indeed in 1933 he moved, I believe, to Warsaw. And then he also had another rule that he wants a yeshiva of his to be near him, because the Lubavitch yeshiva and the dynasty of Chabad were always, from the Rebbe Rashab's time when he started the yeshiva in 1897, they went hand in hand. So, for example, where was the shul and the place of the Rebbe Rashab was in the courtyard of the yeshiva, and that's where they lived, and then that's where they farbrenged, and that's where they davened, and the cemetery was nearby. Everything was there, and the mikveh was there, etc., etc. So that's what he wanted also. So he couldn't get that in Latvia, in Riga, Latvia. So he was hoping to do that in Warsaw, because in Warsaw from 1921 on, there was a yeshiva, a Lubavitch yeshiva that was founded, and he had a lot of nachas from the yeshiva. In fact, he said once, the yeshiva in Warsaw, Poland, is similar to what the yeshiva was in Lubavitch. And the yeshiva in Lubavitch was a one-of-a-kind yeshiva, very Hasidic. 7 hours they learned Gemara. I heard this from one of the students, that some students would avoid going to the bathroom because they didn't want to break their studies. 7 consecutive hours of learning. So it was a very, very strong yeshiva, both Nigla, Talmud, and Hasidus as well, of course. And the main thing was the Hasidus and the davening Ba'avoda and the Mashpiyim, the Fabrengens. It was a life change for those that came to the yeshiva and stayed with the program. Not everyone stayed, but those that stayed became real frum Yidden and very pious. So he wanted to have the same thing in Poland, that he felt that in Warsaw he could have it because of the yeshiva, because it started in 21 and it was so good. So he moved in 33. He moved to Warsaw, and he was there for 2 years, and then because of his health and other reasons, he moved to Otwock, which is, I was there, it's a suburb of Warsaw, about 25 minutes outside of Warsaw, and they found a beautiful house, and I was at that property, and it has a great backyard with trees. Otwock was like considered the countryside, or one of the countrysides of Warsaw, and it was a better air, supposedly, because of the air pattern. I don't understand it, but because it's so close to Warsaw, but the trees, a lot of trees, and the greenery, the trees, and the air pattern made it a place, Otwock, for even healing the tuberculosis. There were sanitariums there that were specially made for healing of tuberculosis. So the Rebbe moved over there because he did suffer from, I don't know if it was MS or ALS or tuberculosis, but the Rebbe had, an illness that required him to have better air. So he moved there, and he moved the yeshiva from Warsaw. In 1935, he moved it to Otwock. So again, the yeshiva was near him. This mimer that we have, that we're going to study now, was said in 1932. And during those years, from 1930 to 30, from actually earlier when he left in 1927 till 1933, when he went to Poland, he traveled so first to Eretz Yisrael in 29, and then to America, in the 30 was in America, and then in 31 and 32, he traveled around to different cities where there were, Lubavitch outpost, either a small cheder or yeshiva, or some chasidim, and they wanted the Rebbe to come, because they for them traveling was much more difficult, and they wanted to see the Rebbe and hear chasidus from him and have yechidus with him and have private audience. So this is One of the places where the Rebbe visited was Postov. And this is a mimer that the Rebbe said there on the Shabbos Parshas Pekudei. Okay? So that's what we're about to learn. Okay? Are we ready? Okay. Beis Samach Dalit, Shabbos Parshas Pekudei, Tofres Tzadik Beis, Postov. Veyadata, it skipped a little, introduction. We'll go right to the mimer. It begins with the words Veyadata Hayoim Vashavos Ovecha. It's a pasuk in Deuteronomy in Voschanan. Veyadata Hayoim.
Rabbi, I'm sorry. What page is it? 100 and...
No, in your volume, you should have volume 3 of the Sefer we're using, page 203.
Yeah.
203.
203. Okay,
You're welcome. V'yadaita hayoim, you should know today, v'ashavois elovecha, and you should make your heart be attentive. To what? Ki Hashem hu Elikim, to the fact that God is Elokim, that the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton, the name of God, that's the holiest of the 7 names of God, which equals 26, which is known as Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, the 4-lettered name, it is Ho Elokim, it is God. But it is God in the form of another name of God, i.e. the name Elokim, and we'll talk about that later. Bashamayim and Mal, this idea that Havaya Hu Elokim is in the heaven from of above, V'al ha'oretz, and on earth, mitachas, from below, Einoi, there's nothing besides God. Now, Chevre, this verse has become a mainstay in Chabad Hasidus thinking, and maybe even in Breslov Hasidus, where they talk about Einoid Milvada, but in Chabad, this verse encapsulates the approach of using the Chochma Bina Das, a person's brains, a person's intelligent faculties, to comprehend how it is that God, the supernal, infinite God, is one with the God that is limited to nature. And we're going to talk about that. But this is not just another verse in the Torah in Parshas Voschanan. And you look at the opening of the verse. V'yodaito hayoim. You should know. So the word is v'yodaito, Avram. You should have das, meaning you should really focus and concentrate on this. So that itself is very important. Number 2, what should you do, hayoim, today, now? You should make your heart be attentive. In other words, it's not enough to have v'yadaita, to have the knowledge, even if the knowledge is so profound that you are able to focus and concentrate on it, which is the idea of das, but that's not adequate. You have to get your heart to be hashevesa. What does hashevesa mean? Attentive. There's listening and there's listening. Sometimes you listen, it goes in from the right ear through the left, and from the left back to the right, and it comes out, and you don't have any idea what was said, and it's like you never heard it in the first place. Why is that? Because there was no hashevesa. There was just a cursory, hearing and listening. But if you want something to really penetrate and make a difference and make an impact, for that you need vashevesa elavavecha. You need to make your heart be attentive. Ki havaya hu elikim. And what is it that I have to make, that I have to v'yadaita, I have to really focus and concentrate on, which is the idea of das. And number 2, that I need to make my heart be attentive to it, and so it results in a feeling of the heart, that Yud Kei Vav Kei is Elokim. Because Elokim is nature, and nature doesn't bespeak the supernatural God, the transcendental God, the miraculous God. Nature talks of nature. And in nature, in fact, which equals 86, which is the same gematria as the word hateva, the nature, it conceals God. So the verse is telling you, you should know and make your heart be attentive that it's not that way. That Havaya Hu Elokim, that in nature there is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the infinite God, the supernatural God. And it's so true that this is the case, Bashamayim Imal, that it's in the heaven and what's above heaven, from above, the Oretz, and it's on earth, mitachas, from of below, Einoid. Obviously, these words aren't extra redundant words, but they refer to much more profound ideas, as we will discuss in the Maimer. I also wanted to say that I forgot a moment ago to tell you when I gave the monologue, is that this Maimer was said in Postov, because in Postov, like in the other cities in Lithuania, you had a lot of Litvaka, it's Lithuania. So the Rebbe chose different Maimarim to address the crowds and the overall environment of the area. So even though maybe it was said in a Lubavitcher Shtibel, or maybe it was said in where they were Hasidim, and the Litvak didn't come, the fact is that they would hear about it because one person tells the other. And in those days, you should know, there wasn't this, Baruch Hashem, today there's much less of it, but there wasn't this animosity and fighting between Chassidim and Misnagdim and Litvaks. Happens to be in those days there was a very good relationship, and it was really a cultural thing. So you could have two people living side by side. One was a real Litvak and one was a real Chassid. And they shopped together and they ate together and they spoke together and they laughed together and they cried together. There wasn't such a thing. Maybe the only thing that they did differently is they davened in a different shtiblach. So you have the Karlbach shul, you have the Chabad shul, you have the Minyan Factory Litvish shul, and you have Rabbi Soloveitchik shul, and you have Eish Kodesh, and you have the other shul, the Mar shul, which they call, I think now, I was told, the Tursky shul, right? They're naming it for Rabbi Tursky of Shalom. Whatever the case, each shul has its different orientation, and depending on what you want to gravitate towards and live with and all that, that's the shul you choose. But really, everyone was kind of friends and together. So, the Rebbe knew that. So by saying a Maimer Chassidus on such a verse, which is, you'll see, it's a deep Maimer and very profound and intellectual in the sense that there's concepts that we have to really think about, it fits into the Litvish mindset. The Litvish mindset is a very intellectual mindset of study. And selling the Litvish mindset, a heart without mind usually doesn't work. Once they're impacted by the mind, they're willing to hear more about the heart. In fact, I read, and I think I told you this a long time ago, that the Alter Rebbe was known as the Litvak. The previous Rebbe writes this, the Alter Rebbe, because he came from Lithuania. So the Rebbe once said that the Alter Rebbe, what style and approach did he use to share Hasidus Chabad with everyone, including the Litvish world, was he impressed them first with his knowledge in Nigla, in Talmud and Shulchan Aruch. So first he was known as the Rav, the Bala Shulchan Aruch. And when they heard that and they learned the Shulchan Aruch and they saw his great depth in Shulchan Aruch and in Talmud and Halach and all that, they said, oh, this is a man we can respect. He talks our language. He thinks our way. Little do they know that he doesn't think their way because he's a chassid. And he believed in the Baal Shem Tov, and he learned from the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mezrich. But they were open to hearing from such a person. Because if such a person teaches Hasidus, that means it's coming from a place which they call the Litvish world the right place. The right place is Nigla. You come in shooting Hasidus, and Yonis and I have had occasions over the years to discuss this, living in Bet Shemesh and going to different koilos and people and all that and shuls. And sometimes you get kind of